Okay, we're back again here at allpointstv.com, and we're glad to see you out there. We can tell by the count that people are waiting for the program to go on. We come on at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Mondays, and we hang around for 1 hour, and we test your patience. We test your patience most of the time during that 1 hour period of time. But think about it, and think about the positive side. It was only one day a week, and it's 1 hour of the week, and so we're not like hogging your time. And we are looking forward to the program today. I did want to. This is not my topic, but I wanted to bring a book that kind of ties in what I'm saying on my Facebook post. And I'm writing a two. I started a two-part series today, and I've been writing in some 3 and 4 part series recently because of the length of the narration. I don't want to tie anybody out in one fell swoop, and you have to kind of divide this information up because you can overwhelm. I'm not saying people cannot keep up. That's not the point. The point is that people have a lot of other things they're doing, and I can't assume that they're going to stop the music and then watch what we're doing here. So cut the to do the Solomonic thing, rather than cutting the baby in half, where you ask them to divide and then divide, and then people are screaming out, "No, don't do it!" And you could tell you know the story that they have in the Bible about Solomon having made the decision. Well, I'm not going to ask for any Solomonic division here. I'm going to be respectful of the time, and I'm going to, and I'm doing that in my post. I'm dividing it up so that no one day will take too much away from what people are doing in their everyday schedules, because I know people are very busy. We all trying to eke out an existence here in this inflationary period that's been created by these politicians. And as you know, only government can create inflation. So all this stuff about these high prices in the stores being caused by the producers of the product, that's pure nonsense if you know how the market operates. And I'm gonna and I can testify to it because I use the market and an understanding of the market every day. Because when things are not meeting my price and my needs, it has to be both. If there is a single matching that goes on when my needs are both a price issue and a monetary issue, if both those are not met, those conditions are not met, then I don't deal with the product. So that negotiation that goes on in the market doesn't go on with the government. The government doesn't negotiate. As you found out, let's see, the day is the 28th, 29th. Okay, as you found out 14, 15 days ago, when you mail in your return, if you owe the money, as I did, I didn't owe any money. I paid some money. You know, we don't. We say we owe. I owe my taxes. I owe the taxes. Those are not my taxes. Those are that's the government assessing my finances, and I'm paying this draft to leave them alone. We have a bargain, by the way, and if the government keeps this part of the bargain, I can be more down with the graft that's required. The bargain is that taxation, some of it is necessary because government has to fund itself, because government is not a profit. It's not a profit-making institution. It is not a wealth-producing institution. It's a wealth-consuming institution. And in order to justify its robbery, this is what one writer, I just read a book. I read a book last year when I was traveling. That was called Daylight Robbery. Very good book. And this is daylight robbery, but you have to tolerate so much of it because it does take money in order for the government to function. But the bargain in that is that the government will, in fact, do a certain amount of taxation. I consider taxation to be taxation theft. There's a certain visible and out in the open robbery, But for that, we are supposed to get the protection of the country and the protection of the people in the country. And that's the part of the bargain that's on the other side of the equation. We are here with the tax uh, payment. And in paying that, we expect government to protect the country and protect us in the country. And when it does not do that, then this part of the bargain is not being met. You would then say, well, does that mean that does that mean that they're going to suspend the taxation? The answer is no. You better have that money in there, and they stamp it. You know, they say a little bit. You know, listen, the post office is a government operation. It should be a private operation, which allows it to be more efficient. Where if it's profit making, they have to be more efficient. But because the government can waste money and don't have to be accountable for it, there is very little efficiency of the post office. Your letters may get there in 2 days, may get there in a week. Sometimes I mail out something, it didn't get there until I had an investigation to make on where it ended up, and it ended up in Yazoo. I mean, that thing went. By the time it got to the person I sent it to, and I kept calling, did you get it yet? Did you get it yet? And by the time they got it, because it was the payment I was making, and the guy thought I had taken some a product from him, which was some tapes that he had that I wanted to get, and wanted to listen to what he had because he had some tapes I couldn't find anywhere else. And he thought I was pulling his leg because I said, "Yeah, I mailed it, and I sent a cashier's check." But it went all around the world before it got to, where's this guy? I can't think where he is now. I think he was in Ohio, or was it on the East Coast? I can't remember exactly. But anyway, it went all the way around the country almost. And by the time that it got there, it was all rankled up and things like that. The point I'm making is just that the government does not have to be efficient, because the government is a dictatorship, and it does not have to please its customers in order for it to exist.
Yeah, because like, let's face it, you and I or anybody else want to start up, say we want to get something done to our house. We don't sit there and gee, I'm eagerly looking forward to go get a permit so I can do this to my house, which adds additional cost to the materials and the labor I'm having to put into the house. Now I got to get something like here in Michigan, here in Flint, they adjust it to like it's a certain percentage of the materials and labor going to be used to that. They tack on, that's how much they charge you for permit to do this. Why the hell would I sit there and anticipate with eagerness the ability to go pay some bureaucrat some money for a piece of paper? They're not doing any of the damn work,
right?
But they want to come in there and say, you got to give it our cut. I
right,
mean,
right.
That's the reason why they are so resentful against organized crime, because organized crime demand protection money, and that's essentially what we pay to the government. So if we pay, they keep us from, they don't send us to prison, take our stuff and send our family into poverty. That's what we get in return for paying our taxes.
Yeah. And John, the reason why they have those contractors having to get a license is because that's how they keep tabs on any improvement you make in your house. So that when they do the assessment, that improvement is made by them having a record of it. They then attach that improvement onto the tax assessment, where they can then charge more money for your property, which you never will own, by the way, and you're always going to be paying the one person never goes away. And your mortgager will go away at a period of time. It may take 30 years in order for them to do it. 15 if you're able to cut it in half by doing some things that you can do to kind of cut down the amount of money you're paying on the interest. But you will at some point get the banker to go away. Well, there's one other part of that payment you were making, that larger balloon payment you were making, that never goes away, and that's that other guy that's over there standing behind the banker, and that's the government has its hands out, and that's the what's that word? And the forever the what's that thing that Barry that Damon Barry does called The Knowledge of the Forever Time. That's a very good series, by the way. You should watch that series. But this is the forever time that you never will get away from that. And, it's the ownership. I don't want to get too far away from what I came to talk about. But the ownership issue in this country is a real problem because there are very few things in this country. There's no property you can own in this country. There are no property owners in this country. I mean, I'm talking about land and housing and any kind of thing that you can build a habitation from. All of that is that there's no ownership of that. If you park your car in your driveway and you don't have a license on your car, that's fine, because you're paying the taxes of the car taxes with the taxes on the property. But once that car is driven off that property onto that street, any part of that street, you can park on the side of the street. If there's no tag license that car to be out there, and that car is out there without that tag on it, saying that you paid that particular part of the graph for the car, then that's going to be a problem. But that's the reason why they have. I've gone through that a number of times. I make an improvement. Any improvement I made in my home, the person that comes in there, anything that I add to the house, there's a contractor that has to go downtown to show what that is about, to show them that what they're adding to the house. They can then assess it, and based upon what the contractor is claiming in the paperwork they're doing, so they can put another assessment on the property. Now I'm going to see what they do with something I just did, and that is I had a property that I was co-owning, and I paid this other person off to quit the property. So now I want to see, given how much I paid for the other half of the property ownership, the property rentalship. I don't want to say ownership, because ownership means that you then see anything you own, you don't have to pay anything else on it. And there's nobody in this country that's at that level. Not Oprah and the rest of them, all the billionaires, none of them, not Trump, any of them. As Trump has found out in terms of putting these liens on his property, you never get away from it. I don't care how much money you make, you will always be at some point of assessing your real estate. And Oprah doesn't own any more real estate than I do, but she the difference is that she pays a higher amount of money for the real estate that she's on. So she is more indebted to maintain her presence at the property, but she'll never own the property. And that 90 million estate that she has, and she has several properties, that's what they do now. They go around and they own different properties, so when they vacation, they don't go into hotels, they go to another property that they own. And Oprah has a $90 million estate in a home in California. Now, I don't know what the others are, but I think it's 2 or 3 other properties that she owns, that she has, that she better watch it, because while she's not in those other homes, she might go back there and find out there's squatters, that there are squatters in there, because if it's unoccupied, they just simply move in. And the government is so crazy right now that they are saying that if you have somebody in your home, that's like coexistence. They need habitation, and the government is very relaxed in its enforcement of the property values in the country. The first property value, by the way, is the ownership of the country by the people that lives in the country, the citizens here. You don't even have ownership of that. So that's some of what I'm writing about right now, because I want person to see what they're dealing with among their leadership. Anyway, that's a brief intro, but my subject is going to be something very different. I'm getting to my subject today is going to be on this Supreme Court that just recently turned down. As I said, that there was no immunity claim to be made. So the court, not because they are seeing it through my lens, nor seeing it properly, as can be seen by the stupid question they were asking to Donald Trump's lawyers. And I'll get into that when I get into that. That's what I really came to the studio to talk about today. But there's one other topic I want to talk about that before we get there, and that's the book I brought to the studio, which is I just want you to understand how what you're dealing with your political leaders. And I brought a book to the studio today. It's written by a person you should be more familiar with, Robert Groden, and he co-wrote this book with Harrison Edward Livingston. It's called High Treason. The subheading of the book is The Assassination of President John F. Kennedy, What Really Happened. And I read all these other books. Well, almost all of them. All the ones that have come out prior to maybe, I'm going to say here, before 2005, because I went to some other areas of research after that. But everything that was out up to 2005, every book that came out, and maybe beyond that, because I read the book by Ventura, Jesse Ventura, the wrestler, but later on the turned politician who became the governor of Minnesota. I love reading his stuff not because he's a scholar, but at least he's an independent thinker, and I respect that because there are not too many of them, as I'm finding out in terms of what they're talking about with this nonsense they're talking about with the immunity of the president. And I'm gonna get into that. And there'll be nobody that will come behind me and say anything about what I'm saying. I can tell you that right now. They're not going to do it, and they can't do it because they're not on this. Because I want to tell you something. They're not on this level. I know you think I'm bragging, but I've listened to them again on this issue here. I've listened to the Supreme Court members on this issue here, and they're not on this level. None of them. And you'll never see them come out in public and challenge what I'm saying either. And that's a statement to be made by them. You can make a statement by your silence. They're not on this level. I'm just telling you, they're not. And they better not come out and say anything. I dare them. Not going to do it. They're not going to do it, and they can't do it. They're not. There's nobody in this country qualified to correct what I'm saying. They did not start out as early as I started, and they did not do the intensive study that I did when I was at the level of their scholarship. It's only 3 degrees they would give out at the university anyway. I don't care how much schooling you have. I wrote about this in a post I was doing. And I was saying that no matter how many degrees you get, you never can get past the 3rd degree. It may give you more than one of the 3rd degree, but they never give a 4th degree. I mean, 1 degree above the 3 degrees that you have. And I was equating that in one of my articles to the Masonic group that go to 30. They go as high as 33 degrees. So the 3 degrees that you have 357 degrees that are yet unavailable, and the 33 degrees, the 327 degrees that are unavailable on the Masonic level. But at least it's 31 is 30 degrees more than the PhDs. So I don't go around bragging about, but that's why I don't go around bragging about it, and I don't think I can. I have never called myself doctor anything. Some people do that. I try when I was with my study group, they would do that doctor stuff. I would try to pour water on that because you're saying more than these college professors are not doctors. Doctors are what? Doctor is a medical term. Now, the adult term, if we were not so egotistical in our training, the term for us is Mr. Why? Because you're not. It's an age thing, and really, I'm gonna tell you what really should be required rather than standing up. I know some of those judge programs when the judge comes even in the fake jury rooms, the courtrooms, like Judge Judy or some of these other judges on TV, and they walk in and the bailiff or the other whatever you want to call the person that's got the weaponry in the court. They say the court rise. Everybody stands up because these people are wearing a robe. That's an ego thing. I would love to stand up. I thought they knew what they were doing, but they don't know what they're doing. And but I think that I saw a post last week, and it showed that when the teacher, listen to this very carefully. It shows you where we are and where they are in like Japan. When an instructor in Japan, I read this last week, didn't know it until last week, but I read it. And I said, oh, okay, I can understand that based on what I see in terms of Japanese culture and so on. But when Japan has a teacher that's absent, they don't even call a sub. Listen to this carefully. They don't even call a sub. While you're out there riding at Columbia University, in the Japanese school at all school levels, first grade all the way up, when the teacher is absent, they don't even call a sub. You know why? Because those students will be in that classroom in their books without the instructor. Try that here. They got a way that they exercise in Japan. You know how you take that basketball and you're individually playing it and you're shooting that ball? What they do is they have a circle and everybody got two balls they're dribbling. And then they slide around this way, and the other guy got to move in that position there and have one of the balls that he was dribbling, and the other ball took over from the other person. The other person slid down, and now they're dribbling, and they just keep sliding around that way. Where it's a coordinated kind of activity where they get to think about it in terms of the exercise they're doing because they're training them to think. You think they're training to think here in this country? How many persons you think are thinkers? There are very few. And last week was an example of that. Well, anyway, I brought this book. I just want to end this part of it before I get into my topic on high treason. You need to read this book by Groden and Livingston, because this book right here that came out in 1989, this is really, of all the books out there, and there are a lot of great ones out there, Jesse Ventura's book is a good book. It's not a scholarly book, but it's a good book. His book titled "They've Killed Our President." That's a plural. Because I have to tell you something. I said this is my post today on Facebook. That was part of the topic, but I went to a lot of other areas as well. But I was saying here is I was pinpointing where the president, our president, the 35th president of the United States, was shot 4 times. Twice in the head, once in the back, and a phone shot in the front. And the person, Lee Harvey Oswald, didn't do it. Get that. Oswald did not shoot the president. I've studied this case for 40 years, and there are very few can tell me anything about it. I've looked at the Zapruder film, Abraham Zapruder film. I looked at the Nix film. I've seen the film blown up, and I knew exactly what happened in Dealey Plaza. There was a firing squad in Dealey Plaza that day on the 22nd of November, 1963. You can take that let alone.
He was triangulated. I mean, they ate
triangular fire.
Yeah, triangular fire. Anybody who's actually used a Carcano rifle, I have one. Okay, and I have one, and mediocre. I mean, he got it really cheap, according to Oswald did, according to the press that I read. He
Mhm.
got it through the mail order, and that's why because of that we can't order firearms through mail order catalog places anymore.
Mhm.
But the Carcano wasn't one of the best weapons. Another thing is that range. He was far away. He shot through trees and still accurately hit the person in the back
That's
of the
right.
head. I don't buy that. Okay, I mean, I'm a shooter. I mean, I've been not shooting like assassinations. I've been in competitive shooting before, 22s and a range. And guess what? It took us time. We weren't under pressure, but we were only 50 yards away, and it's sometimes still hard to sink to get that shot right in the center. Okay, so I mean, it's ridiculous to think that he did. Was it
Can't be
just luck?
done.
Just luck? Oh yeah, just lucky.
Yeah.
All the other stuff happened. Just luck that it happened. Hit the
Can't
target.
can't be done. Not with that, because, and see, you understand the weapon that we're talking about here, the 6.5 attack kind of rifle, which the Italians, by the way, were laughing because they claim that's why they lost World War II. You shooting over here, and the gun and the shot goes over there. But even if you sight it, but no, you can't do it because the Kakana rifle is a bolt action where you have to do this and lock the other bullet in there. You execute the other shell from the rifle and put another one in there and all of that. And don't forget, we're talking about what one writer calls 6 seconds in Dallas, because within 6 seconds, all the shooting was over.
I'm going to find it hard to do because I try to dry fire the weapon, which you're not supposed to do. But well, the dry, and I couldn't put out that much range, much less put time and accuracy.
It can't be
into
done.
It can't be done. I just don't see it.
Right? It can't be done. The Warren Commission report was a fictional account. Earl Warren, that's another thing too that got to be discussed. Is the you see, we're talking about that's another part of what we're talking about. We think that the government just started to coalesce around a certain lie, and this is a recent event where the government is tied up, the court is part of it, the politicians are part of it, and they all have a synopsis view of what they're telling us is reality. But go back and look at the members of the Warren Commission, where you had persons from every corridor of power that was on that committee. There was Earl Warren. The report was named after Earl Warren. And I once thought, until I read Grodin's book, I once thought that that Earl Warren was a more or less passive, intimidated member. I know the conversation that was had to convince him that he was going to be on that committee. In other words, that he didn't have a choice in it, because Johnson had what's the word, bribe? Do I want to say bribe, or had he? What do you call it when the point is somebody's holding something over you? They know about your private life.
Extorted.
Yeah.
Extorted, blackmail. Yeah.
Blackmail. Earl Warren was blackmail into accepting, putting his name over it, because we know we had this idea at that time. We didn't have this much today. We see a Supreme Court Chief Justice over 70 a day, and we just think, okay, that he's part of the conspiracy. You know, we don't want to use that word in this country either. Conspiracy happens elsewhere, but now we were not bad, even with Chief Justice. Put Robert's name on the report, see if anybody believes it. But back in that time, we're talking about the Warren Court, which had made the Brown ruling in '54, and it gained some credence because of that, and other things that it done. And so the Warren Court had a certain kind of prestige, and it was important, if they're going to do this cover up, that they have the name of someone that had a prestigious persona in front of the American people. And Earl Warren had that, although he didn't deserve it, but he had that, and that's why they put his name on it. But the report really was Allen Dulles' report. And what is he doing on that one of the seven on that committee, when he had been fired by John F. Kennedy as the director of the CIA, had been fired by John F. Kennedy.
Yeah, and another thing is he had started before the CIA. He was with the OSS, which became the
Yes,
CIA.
he was.
So he was a dirty individual. I mean,
Yes, he was.
Very murky character.
Yeah, and the Dulles brothers. Don't forget, Dulles' brother was the Secretary of State under Dwight D. Eisenhower. John Foster Dulles. John, that was his brother.
I was aware of, but I knew the Dulles was the wasn't the also which one was no that was which one was the Secretary of War or Secretary of Defense or something during the FDR administration. Which one was that? They had I forget. I thought it was Dulles too. That was Secretary.
It could have been.
Yeah.
It could have been Dulles. These were some scoundrels.
Yeah, because you see, people realize that the FDR administration was already rife with people who were left leaning, right? I mean, red sympathetic
Mhm.
Reds, and John Kenneth Galbraith, the guy who he actually came from Canada, he was one chief economist during that era, which is he was a neo-Keynesian, if you want to call that term.
Mhm.
He'd helped to shape economic policy throughout the FDR administration thereafter, right up to probably sometime in the 70s when his influence still carried on, but I think he officially retired from that position. So yeah, they don't understand that. They don't understand we got a Congress family here that's been in power since the FDR administration. Largely, it's the Dingell family. Look
at that.
They've been in power.
Yeah.
The old man was in power during the FDR administration. His son was for the 50s till the time he died, almost 60 till the time he died. Then his wife took over.
That's right.
That's 80 years of one family's rule from a congressional seat.
You'd be surprised of the interconnectedness of the power centers of this country. There are families that have controlling interests in the power centers, and how that connection is aristocratic, the elite. That's why they're able to become so wealthy without having done anything. If you don't have a product that you're producing, how are you producing all this wealth? How does Nancy Pelosi have all the wealth she has? And Biden, they don't have a product that they produce.
All the Kennedys have the power, their money they got.
And that's another part of it.
I mean, their father was
family. There's a family. That's why the book is by Russ Baker is called Family of Secrets, because it's a circular. The elite. There's a closure around the aristocrats in this country, and the other ones wielding power. These are family power centers. And you can name them and go down the list and so on and so forth, and began to come to some understanding of how this country really operates, both by the visible leadership and by the ones that you don't see, the shadow leadership, the ones that's in what you would call the secret apparatus. That's a controlling element in this country. You'd be surprised of the interrogatories that are running things that are not subjected to the vote. And hopefully we're gonna give Trump another chance at being president. That's what should happen, and I fear for the country if it doesn't happen.
Because Trump is the only person I hate putting in that dire terms, but he's the only person who was not a political insider. He played both sides. He admitted to that.
Yeah.
But donating to both sides when he was a real estate developer and all that. He said that. He clearly stated the reason why he did it, because he didn't know who he was going to have to deal with. So, I mean, basically, he knew how to pay along to get along. Okay. So, but Trump they don't have the goods on him. They want to manufacture stuff out of thin air.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why they hate him, because he's not one of them.
That's right. John, if they can get you on what you did and they get you on what you didn't do, then there's no escape from their tentacles. They are now, they're prosecuting Trump on things he didn't do, and things that he did are not crimes. There's no crime. This is what I came to talk about. I'll get to that in 1 minute, but I will talk about that, because we got to understand that as well. But this book here will point you in a direction away from where your thinking may well be right now, where you believe these people. You believe in what they did. In the Warren Commission report, they had persons from each sector of the power in this country. They had someone from Wall Street, that was John J. McCloy. They had members of the House, that would be the president that came in after Carter in 1970. He challenged Carter in 1976. That would be Gerald Ford. And in 80, because Gerald Ford, who was from Midwest, and then you had Gerald Ford connected to the New England financiers. Nelson Rockefeller made him vice president. Then, if you read Carl Oglesby's book called "The Yankee Cowboy War," you can see here that power center, the Midwest and the East, coalescing with those two candidates. Neither one of them, by the way, had been elected by the American people. Go back and read that, by the way. We had a coup in front of the American people's eyes. They never saw it. There was a coup in terms of running Nixon out. Nixon had won every state except one in the election of 1972. But his fatal error, the fatal, what's that called? Fatal mistake. The fatal mistake that Nixon made was the rapprochement with China. He went to China in 1972. And within 2 years, although he won every state in 1972 in the balloting of the Electoral College, every state except one, the only state he didn't carry in 1972, talking about Nixon now, this one they ran out in 1960, and then ran him out again, ran him out in 1960, but still in the election and given it to Kennedy. And then ran him out again in 1974, after being elected in 1972, winning every state except one, and all the electoral votes he got in that year, except 18. He got 520 of the 538 electoral votes. Go back and look at that, and ask yourself the question: how does a man that wins every state except one, get all electoral votes except 18, got 520 electoral votes of the 538 electoral votes that were available, and the man is ousted from office out of the people's voting for him in that kind of numbers? What is a 17 million vote disparity between Richard Nixon and George McGovern? Now, this is the largest spread of votes between two candidates in the history of the country. And he's out of office 2 years after that. His mistake was the rapprochement he made with China in 1972, and they want to keep that ball rolling. They don't want the Cold War to end because it's too lucrative. As long as you can point to an enemy and scare the people about this is the threat, you don't look at them as being the threat, and they can continue to heist the country and heist the treasury in the country, so that they have these homes on these limited salaries. That's the public salary they're getting. You don't see the undertone of what they're getting behind the scenes because that's not made available to the public. We don't go into the public record to ask these questions. We don't ask these questions about how does this guy named Alvin Bragg in New York worth $15 million? You think this guy who's a nut that doesn't know anything, you think this man has earned that kind of money with his fat head? He's another know-nothing up there. And Fanu, don't say Fatty now, because Fatty is too much like the other popular name in the South, which is Flossie. And that F-A-N-I, she can say it's Fanu and give you French accent all she wants. I'm from the South. I can tell you that in the South, they had names like Fanny, Fannie Lou, Flossie Mae, Fannie Lou Hamer. Remember that name? That's a popular name. The woman that became a member of SNCC and all that. Go read. You can read about her. I'm talking about, look, these people are multimillionaires. Fanu, don't say Fanny. Fanu is worth $6 million. Her salary is $100 and some thousand. Most of that goes toward taking care of a boyfriend, but that is also money you have to live on. So where's the savings to be able to accumulate in her bank account $6 million? Anybody going to inquire about that? How did that happen? And Bragg is worth $15 million. The man has yachts and boats and property all over the place. So does this harlot, New York Attorney General, Letitia James, Jesse James. She didn't have a French. There's no French needed for her first name. Just call her Jessie to complete her first name, and she's worth 15 million. So how do you explain that? The graph that goes on. That's how you explain it. These are George Soros acolytes.
See, I had friends who I got friends who are wealthy. I mean, I know them through it, through the internet and stuff. And one man spent his entire life accumulating $5 million, and he lived pretty frugally for the first 20 some years. He and his wife were together.
Mhm.
They had a nice house, but they didn't. But he invested and saved, compulsive saver and investor, and he accumulated $5 million before his death.
Mhm.
Okay, but that was a lot of effort in paying taxes
Sure.
to make sure he doesn't get
Mhm.
everything taken from him. These people accumulate wealth within 2 to 3 years to surpass that. After 30 some years of existence and working hard for something, and these guys who just get into politics within 3 to 4 years surpass those people who actually did make sacrifices for their own families and kept themselves going stuff by the bootstraps. These people, if they're so damn good, I'll tell you what, why don't you just come and become our financial advisors and we'll go follow you that way. But instead of they got the gun to our head. That's how they accumulate their wealth.
Yeah. How do you explain that wealth? It's certainly not by anything that they know, other than they may have some inside information about the stock market, because they are the ones that regulate it, and through the regulation they can find out things you can't find out basically on the outside. They're not smart. So there's not that their academic prowess. I mean, what does Biden know? Biden finished 78 or so, 76, 78 or so in a class of 86. So that means that this man is at the very bottom, almost at the bottom of everybody that graduated in that class that he came out in.
There are 10 worse ones than him, but they're probably chasing ambulances. But
yeah, not in the top 10 of anything. And have we heard anything about Obama being in the top 10 of anything at Harvard? There's no indication he knows anything. Nothing about the law. And he'd never get on here and say anything of what I'm talking about, because he's another one of those persons not qualified. But very few of them are, to be honest with you. I have the same degrees they have, but I'm not one of those lightweights in the area. They claim to be scholars in the Constitution. They're not that, and it took me a long time to understand that, because I kept listening to them. I said, you can't say that. I was saying that particularly with people like Lawrence Tribe, but I also say it with Alan Dershowitz. You can't say what Alan Dershowitz is saying. Alan Dershowitz is not a scholar of the Constitution. He's not going to say anything publicly about it. You're not going to ever come on my post and say anything publicly, because that would be another no contest. You can talk to the layman, but the things he's saying, he can't say it here, and he would not dare get. I tell you, he would not dare get on any of my posts and make another counterclaim. He just this is above his pay grade. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you what the facts are. They're not on this level. But this treason that Livingston and Groder are talking about is what you're saying right now. This is treason, what they're doing. You can't do this to the President of the United States. And when they did the high treason that Groden and Livingston are talking about in this book, High Treason, they're talking about the fact that what they did is they put someone from every corridor of power in the country. They had John J. McCloy from Wall Street. So they had Wall Street represented through James J. McCloy. They had Gerald Ford from the House of Representatives. They had that locked up. They got a member of the House involved in the cover-up. They brought in Hale Boggs and Richard Russell from the Senate, Hale Boggs from Louisiana, and they had Russell. Where was Russell from? Russell was very close to Lyndon Johnson. I forget the state he's from, but he was on there from the Senate. And they had Earl Warren from the Supreme Court. And that's how they do it. Now let me get to my what I really wanted to talk about today, because I was listening to I don't know if I'm continuing to listen to him or not, because I'm just so disappointed in Mark Levine. He comes on twice a week now. I think they need to go back to once a week to tolerate that noise 2 days a week. I mean, at least it's not 5 weekdays to put them on the weekend. At least that's a little bit of grace right there. But this man has got to stop some of the things he's doing on that program that he has called that's called Life, Liberty, and Levine. And there are things that he's saying in that program where he rightfully challenged the questioning that was going on by the members of the Supreme Court. These people up there asking Trump's lawyers if they have, if the president has immunity as president. He's going all over these on these left field things. What if the president orders someone he doesn't like to be killed, and if he has would that be immunity that he have from that if he does that while he's in office? And they're trying to answer these ridiculous questions. None of these questions should even been asked because they were not even on the topic that they should have been on, because the issue is not immunity. And I thought that Mark Levine was going to penetrate behind the walls of that question by him saying that, what is this? They're asking these questions. But then he went off into a deep end in another direction and started talking about the election of 1876. And that election, by the way, because he's claiming that what Donald Trump is being accused of in terms of trying to overthrow an election, we had two sets of electors sent to the Congress in 1876 in the Tilden Hayes election. And that is true. They had three different three different slates of electors from Louisiana, Florida, and South Carolina. And there was another vote in Oregon. So 20 electoral votes in all that were still askance after the 1876 election was over. And now the question is, with those three sets of electors from three different states, Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina, then what we're going to do with these electors, because those electors that were sent there by those three states were challenging the election outcome and sent their electors to the Congress, sent those electoral votes, two different sets of electoral votes. So the question is, how those votes be counted? Because you got one saying this candidate, there'd be Samuel Tilden. The other one saying the other candidate, that'd be Rutherford B. Hayes. And what does the Congress do? And so Mark Levine was talking about this. It was off. He bragged about that for 2 days. He bragged about the points he made on Saturday, and he was carrying it over into Sunday, and was off in both cases because they had nothing to do with the real issue. But I do say that that the challenge of what the Supreme Court members are doing should be challenged, because that's way off the wall. They're trying to be Solomonic in terms of what Mark Levine was saying, split the baby, that immunity here, but immunity there. But then the question, if you're going to be talking about the immunity question, who decides upon whether or not it is immunity based on the president carrying out acts of the presidency? And if it's not an act of the presidency, so that there be no immunity over here, but immunity over there, you create a Pandora's box, open up that can of worms. That's a nonsense too. It's a non-discussion, what I'm saying. The scholars in this country, and they are scholars, they're not intellectuals, but they're scholars, because they got a certain amount of scholarship that they've actually studied. You can't say they're not scholars, because they do have some scholarship, but the scholarship is flawed. You can't be discussing this crazy stuff they're discussing and then get off into start talking about the election of 1876 as if because the president is set, they change precedents all the time. The court said one thing out of one side of his mouth, it said something else later on, and it constantly does that. You can't go and talk about, well, they did that in 1876, and therefore they shouldn't have a problem with it today, because precedents don't mean anything. We're not talking about precedents here. We're talking about the Constitution of the United States. You understand that? We have the law of the land here. Precedents is not the law of the land. The Constitution is the law of the land. This to me is another blasphemous dismissal of the framers of this country. They are being attacked in this country. That's how I see it. If you're not talking about the Constitution, what you're doing is you are attacking the framers of this country, because the framers put down the law in the first 7 articles of the Constitution, and then they came behind that after ratifying the document in 1788. They came behind that 3 years later to amend the document, but not to create the document. Listen to this very carefully. They didn't create the document by amending it. What they did was add to it because they did not feel they had sufficiently tied the government down. That's what that is about. That's what the amendment. That's what. Let me stop getting too emotional here, because I'll tell you something. I take this very seriously. I got too much training in this area here to let these people get away with this stuff here, and they're not going to get away with it as long as I'm here, because I got something to say about it, a lot to say about it. And I'm the only one in this country that cannot be challenged with what's being said. I'm just telling you the way it is. Look, the amendments were added. The Bill of Rights were added because of some of the objections were made at the point of the ratification of the Constitution. That's as true as rain. And what they had done, they had some people there that were at the end of the convention. 3 of them, and he was some of the heavyweights. One of them was George Mason, and they refused the signature to the document. They were part of creating of the document, but they were not satisfied that the government had been sufficiently chained down, so they would not go out of control. That was a major concern they had. Let me tell you, Mark Levine, what you did last night was a travesty, and it was also Saturday night. You continued it Sunday, but you started it Saturday. It's a travesty. And the whole discussion about whether or not there's immunity of the president is a travesty, is a travesty of the history of the country. Because let me tell you this: we were determined not to have another King George III. You understand that? The creation of a president was a disclaimer of King George III, because the king was above the law. But because we did something that had never been done before and created a president, not the first president only of the country, but the first president in history of the world, as far as having a president to lead a country, that never happened. It had never happened before. Not to lead the country. You could have a president of a corporation or a company, or maybe some of that, but to have a president of a country, this is the first here. And be claiming that there is immunity and therefore the president above the law is nonsense. I'm saying it, and there's no scholar going to say anything different. They better not say it. I dare them to say it.
I definitely say you're more ethical and more, lawful, because you're saying even you would say that immunity could be an easy way out for Trump in terms of presidential immunity, but there isn't, and that's
I'm not going to tolerate it for Trump, who I support.
Right. So I think that's from a mark of a person who has higher standards ethically and moralistically than the general population.
Yeah. Alan Dershowitz claims to have a higher moral calling. He can't claim that. I'm sorry, he can't claim it. You can write a book called Get Trump. You can write a book like that to claim that since you defended him in the first of the 2 impeachments, that you went over there and you defended him in the Senate, but you cannot run with the rabbits and hunt with the hounds. And this man claims that Biden is coherent, Biden is honorable, and he does not see the things all of us see. The man has dementia. There's no doubt about that. But he's voting for the man that is the most violator of the Constitution in this country's history. There's no man that's had more of a criminal record as president of the United States than Joe Biden. He supports Joe Biden, but he claims that he's a constitutionalist in terms of his acumen to defend the Constitution. How can you do that when you're voting for the man who is the greatest violator of the Constitution in the history of this country? There's been no one that's been more criminal in the presidential office than Joe Biden. None. And so this idea of being principled because you go over and defend, what that is about, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. I don't have no respect for Alan Dershowitz. And he better not get on any post that I write. And he better not come on. We both on Rumble. He knows I'm out here. And he better not say anything about anything I post, including this post today. He's not going to say anything because he's not on this level. I'll tell him he's not on this level. He's not. And so this discussion, I thought Mark Levine was going to clean it up, because it's right to say that they were off the mark in discussing this idea of immunity. There's no immunity to the president of the United States because he's the president. He's not the king. What do you think we were fighting for folks? What do you think we were fighting for in 1776? We were fighting against someone being above the law, could not be submitted under the law to be held to account. You couldn't hold a king to account. We did something different in rising up against King George III. We rose up against him because he was not accountable, and we were determined to make our representatives accountable. This is not just a matter of they wanted wanted taxation with representation. This was the idea they want accountability, and they didn't have it under the present arrangement. That's why they picked up the muskets to fight for it, and they fought for it and did it for 7 years, stood resolutely against the strongest power on the continent at that time, and stood against them with their muskets for 7 years, risking their own lives in the process because they knew what happened if they failed. George Washington couldn't afford to fail. I mean, in the end, what was happening with George Washington, to his greatness, is that he would lose a battle and continue to fight. Because to have lost the war, you can lose battles in the war, but to have lost the war, all heads would have been offed. The king would have offed every one of their heads, and that's why they said at the end of the Declaration of Independence, we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's what it took, and they kept to that. The 56 signatories. Benedict Arnold didn't sign it, by the way. He didn't sign the document. So that was something different. They wanted him, by the way. They wanted to send him back to us with what he did. This caused lives for him to go over there and join the other side after being so much a part of the happenings on this side. They didn't go and change sides in the middle of the course. That was they wanted action taken on that, and George Washington was trying to get him back, but that would have been bloodletting there, but not in terms of the retribution, in terms of systemically going after those that were the terrorists inside of the country. That's another part of what we ought to discuss about that. But this idea that we had this happen on the one time, go back and look at those that served on the Warren Commission and see they had co-opted every part of the government, made them part of the cover-up by bringing every one of the instances of the government into the Warren Commission. The 7 members were chosen for a reason. And then you have the 2 investigative bodies, the CIA, which had been formed under Truman, and had a beginning point in 1947, 1948. And then the FBI, which goes back to the 20s, and have that brought in. And then all that coalescing of those power centers to cover up what had happened in Dallas. And people still don't have all the documents. We're close to it in high treason, but that doesn't even that tells a lot of the story right there. We know exactly what happened in Dallas. We know that Oswald was on the 2nd floor at the time of that shooting, was in there drinking a Coke or some other kind of pop in the lunchroom on the 2nd floor, was never on the 6th floor at the time of the shooting. His man was downstairs and could not have run downstairs in that amount of time before this officer comes into the building with his gun out, running up the stairs because they knew that some of the shooters were on the 6th floor, but there was other shooters in the back of the president's too, but he was going to our shooters as well. And you can see that in the Zapruder film very, very, very clearly. I know what I'm talking about here because I've looked at that Zapruder film over and over and over and over again over years and come back to it and look at it some more so as to see if I can find out anything else that's going there. And I will tell you the Knicks film catch that killer on that grass and knoll area where everybody was running to, but they ran up that hill and met people with guns out to ask them, where you going? When they ran up that hill, because there were people there that had Secret Service license, their credentials, and they made them go back. But there were no Secret Service members on that grass and knoll area. Those persons had Secret Service credentials. They were not Secret Service, part of the cover-up. Okay, got to get out of here. But take my word for it. There is no presidential immunity. And the president of the United States is under the law just like everyone else. But there is a process. And that's what they missed in the discussion last week by Mark Levine. And that's what these members of the Supreme Court missed. I'm the only one saying that, but there is a constitutional process, and it's too late to apply to Donald Trump because the process must be applied at the time that the president is in office. And maybe when I come back from my travel, I'll talk about why that protects the president when he leaves office. But that's the going rate that they don't get. Okay, until I come back from my trip, you'll still see some programs that we put in the can, so to speak. So the program will still go on, but I'll be out of the country for the next month, starting on May the 4th. And we'll see you on the other side of that. I'll be back on June the 4th, and we'll pick it up from that point. Until then, I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.